What were we talking about?
Uh, you had mentioned your friend who was a what do they call a violin?
Luthier.
Yeah, violin repair person.
Yes. She, Eliane LeBlanc, she is a part-time knife maker and a full-time violin like repair person. I don't know the actual title. But we were talking about how we're both in different fields, but we're fairly high up in 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 like the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah, relatively successful.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Except it's still really, really difficult for both of us to like run the business and do everything else all at once, like the marketing, the finances, the strategy, the planning, all of that.
Yeah,
So like we're both successful and it's still not easy. Like our situation here is incredibly fortunate. Like rents it's extremely cheap. There's no way I'd be able to run this business without like the help of this shop and stuff like that.
right.
So we were just talking about how full-time knife making or full-time craft is so difficult even if you have it good. It's just so hard.
Yeah, do you foresee like a day where it's just not hard?
Yeah, our 2020 was like that. Remember when everything was selling like hotcakes and things were all happy and good and bliss?
Yeah. Yeah, what a time to be alive. 2020.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say, but like it's kind of true in the sense of like how well the business is running that year and the couple years before.
It's doing pretty good.
It's good, but it's been tough. And like you said, like we wouldn't do anything else. Like our personalities and what we want in life. I mean, what else would we do?
Right.
I've entertained the thought of like, if I didn't do this and I wanted to take a break and do something else, like what would I do?
Yeah.
And it was hard to think of anything. Like I don't want to go into engineering. Like I have a degree in it. There's no way I'm gonna get like a normal engineering job like that. Especially like it's been like 6 years since I graduated.
Yeah.
I don't have any real experience with it. Like
Right.
what would I even do? Where would I go?
Yeah.
And then I would get sick of it in day one and fucking yell at somebody and get fired.
Well, I think you, like me, would get annoyed with, like, being beholden to something, to someone.
Yes, not having like the control to do what you think needs to be done.
Right. And, like, it's stressful to have that much responsibility, but also it's kind of liberating, I imagine.
It's very liberating. I mean, we were just talking about like previous jobs that we had. Like, I had that very brief stint of doing car detailing before I started. I mean, actually, that was around the same time I was making knives part time when I first started,
Right, right.
and it was horrible. It was a fine job, but there were a lot of decisions that I just wish I had a little bit more control over. Like I just I didn't understand and didn't agree with a lot of
Yeah.
the higher level strategy making that my boss
Yeah.
decided on.
Yeah, that old line of, like the high ups are bad, but, like, the people that are the worst are the mediocre people that are in between the high ups and you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just mediocre people in mediocre positions of power, like which that make it seem like their only job is to make your life like as miserable as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice when you have a really cool boss and stuff like that, but that's
That's
seemingly rare.
Yeah, exactly. But I, like you said, I really would live with a lot less than I even do now to just not have to do something that isn't like this, you know?
Yeah, thankfully we have the luxury of doing that. But like, let's say, like we said, in the future, what if we had kids and like a family, and we had to pay for a legitimate shop space that wasn't super cheap? It becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah, but I think I would still be willing to sacrifice luxuries to make that happen, you know?
Yeah, I would too. I just don't see a situation where like I would give this up.
Right, exactly.
Have you seen the wooden sand? Oh my God, it's right in front of my face. It was right there. I don't know. There are moments where I'm just like, I am so tired of this, and I just want a break, and I can't get a break yet. And I know I have to keep going forward. But then knowing that like I have the control and the capability to change that for the future, like it's not in someone else's hands, like that's the most fulfilling and liberating thing. Like it sucks in the moment, but at least I have the power to make those changes.
Yeah, and if you didn't, things wouldn't change. So you'd be stressed out and miserable, but also have no like say in how to orient in order to fix it.
So here's something that I've been thinking for a while.
What's this?
We had a pretty easy starting this business because there wasn't a lot of noise. There wasn't a lot of makers.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of competition. And it was seemingly fairly straightforward. But now I think that's changing. There's so many new makers.
Yep.
There's so many different social media things and tricks and algorithms and hacks and all that stuff. If we were starting now, what do you think would be different? Like, how would we be approaching the business and all that kind of stuff differently?
That's a good question. I think I have to preface this with saying, like, I'm not the business guy.
But you see,
yeah,
like,
I do.
some trends here and there.
I'm going to give my opinion because I'm really good at that. But it should be taken with a grain of salt, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. There's two ways to look at this. There's a way of doing it where you're kind of the yuppie thinking about how to game the system, how to make as much money as you possibly can, how to get as many eyes as you can on whatever you're doing, how to make what you're doing more efficient at the cost of quality, to put out more, to make more money. And I think a lot of people get satisfaction out of that part of it, which is to say the challenge of making a successful business. Like, that's what they're in it for. That's the skill set they want to develop.
Wait, you think most knife makers are in?
No. I'm saying you could take that route.
Right.
And you can use knife making or anything as your vehicle to practice being a good business person.
I feel like knives are a horrible medium to start a business.
Yeah, sure. Maybe.
Handmade knives, yeah.
Maybe.
Actually, I don't even know. Manufactured knives, like that would be tough also.
I'm thinking more like internet influencer knife maker.
Right, got it.
So that's what I'm saying. So you're not really in it for the knife making. You just need something interesting to sell to the algorithm, right? So you could take that route, and there's really nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people get mad at those type of people, but it's okay. Like, you know, I don't want to yuck their yum.
Yeah.
But you could also take the path of someone who likes to make nice shit.
Which is difficult to scale.
It's very difficult to scale. And it's very difficult to make nice shit and market yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
And Don, in his I don't know, single-mindedness can balance these two very difficult things in a way that makes us successful enough to fund both of our lives to a relatively comfortable level.
I like the point that you said, balance it enough, because
Yes.
in my mind, when you were starting to talk about that, I was like, I'm actually not doing a very good job right now. I'm like neglecting a lot of that.
No, the struggle is real. Don't get me wrong. Like, really real. But the fact that you're still managing it is what I'm talking about. And on top of that, he's managing to be creative, push himself creatively, push himself like mechanically and skill level wise, you know, just like learn new skills, whether it be for the business or knife making. Yeah. So back to your question, I'm not sure which is the right way to go, but I know for me, I'd be more satisfied just making nice shit.
The problem with that is if you just focus on making the nice shit, how do you get it out there?
It's a mix of diversifying like you've done, where you do learn Instagram a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're not like spending all your time on SEO. You're not like
You're
not spending every day trying to, oh, what's the new trend now? What is the algorithm like? You know, you're not paying for services that like read the algorithm.
Yeah, I do enough.
You do enough, and I think that's the trick. But also, I think there's something to be said for quality stuff rising to the top, kind of on its own.
Yes. So like, I've noticed through the past couple of years, even though there's so many knife makers, there are always a couple of guys who are really good. They like catch a certain wave, like they meet the right people at the right time, and then their work just like gets talked about consistently, and then they get known, even amongst all the noise.
Right.
Like, remember the knife that was sent to us for testing, the one with the bee grind?
Yeah.
Dan Bittinger.
Yeah.
He's a prime example. He came in the scene like relatively recently.
Yeah.
When everyone started making knives around that time.
Right.
And he just does good solid work. He shows his progress. He shows what he's learning. It's good shit.
Right.
So it catches on.
Yep.
People talk about it. The word of mouth spreads, and then
Right.
it's just like a feedback loop after that.
Right. And I think if you're starting out too, like, there's really nothing wrong with being mediocre or bad.
I mean, you got to start somewhere.
But not even start somewhere. Like, you could be 30 years in and be kind of mediocre and bad,
That's true.
right? And the thing there is that maybe it isn't your only income source. Maybe you've got a day job and you come home and you make knives and you sell them for a modest amount because they're not the highest quality work, but you enjoy it. It's a good, like, interesting source of secondary income, you know?
In the blog post, I actually made a point on that. Like, what kind of business model you'd likely go for if you were actually trying to pursue full-time knife making.
Right.
And I was like, let's just estimate, like, you need let's just say $7,000 to $10,000 in revenue per month based on where you live.
Right.
Right. Chances are you're not going to be jumping in and selling knives for $1,000 or more anytime soon.
Right.
So like, you have to shoot for like $400 to $600 and be able to make them in quantity, like 15 to 20 knives a month.
Yep.
And by that nature, you cannot make them all like extravagant and stuff. They got to be like users, like kind of bread and butter knives.
Yeah.
Stuff that like a lot of people can like get into, and they're like, this is nice. I like using this.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be like a showpiece, you know?
Yeah. But all the while, your main goal is to improve.
Yes.
Whether it's be more efficient, whether it's the cut or the design or whatever. You know?
Finish, that kind of stuff.
But my scenario where it's not your main job, the act of knife making has to be restorative.
Mhm.
So if you're going to spend your time off of your job making knives, it has to recharge you and not deplete you more.
That's a really good point. Yeah, if like you're doing this and you're trying to make it a thing and you like are hating the process,
Right.
then like why are you doing this?
Right, and I think part of the problem is that there's a lot of like information out online about like hustle culture,
Oh, fuck
where
that.
people are like, I worked 50 hours a week at my day job, and then I went home and I grinded, man.
And I did another 50 hours,
Right.
and then I had another side hustle for another 50 hours.
Right. And you notice all those people who are like that are the most manic humans you've ever met. You know what I mean?
That's not real. Nobody does that for like.
No, I know artists at least who started like that.
I guess I know of people in the food industry that are doing that kind of thing
Right.
too.
So like if you want to get into, or I don't know anymore, but when I was in art school, if you wanted to be a concept artist, you had to get good while not getting paid. So you had to dedicate a lot of time at getting good without being paid for it.
This goes back to how fortunate I was and how fortunate we were when starting. Like,
Yeah.
I was doing a part-time while in college, living at home, workshop at home,
Right.
no rent, nothing.
Right.
That's how I started. There is no way I could do that if I was like an adult right now. I didn't have that circumstance. I had to pay my own rent. I had to pay shop rent. Absolutely no way I could do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember where I saw it, but there was some artist who made a video that was talking about like the problem with grinding is that people are really focused on the amount of hours.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize that after like hour 3, your ability to make progress like steeply declines. So you're torturing yourself for no good reason after about hour 3 of practice, right?
Yeah.
And when you're first starting out, like 3 hours is a stretch of like actual meaningful progress.
Yep.
So hitting it as hard as those people seem to hit it is just an exercise in like self-torture.
Yeah, I agree.
But they think they need to do that, because they heard something somewhere about 10,000 hours. So they're like, well, I got to put those hours in, man. Like, how am I supposed to get good?
That's something I think about all the time, and I don't know the answer to. So like the whole thing that prefaced all of this is I had a guy message me on Facebook. He's like, "Hey, I'm in Tucson. I'm not liking where I'm at in my life, and I want to make a change. And I admire what you do, and I want to try to do knife making." I was like, "Ooh, man, it's not easy."
Right.
Like my first thought was like, I don't even know how you would begin to make that life change and become a full-time like maker of anything,
Yeah.
like starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And I had to think it took me like a month to think about it and then be able to write like some sort of like outline of like what you would do in the course of 5 years.
Right.
And I was like, it's not easy.
No, and I think it's even less easy if you're used to a certain lifestyle, and then you have to sacrifice large portions of that lifestyle to start pursuing something that you're interested in.
Yep.
And the thing you're interested in has to be fulfilling enough that you're willing to make those sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky in the sense we started pretty young,
Yep.
and like you were living at your folks' place when you were in college.
Yep.
So when you started your business, you just started in your parents' garage. Some people might not have that luxury, but if you do, and even if you're our age, I'm 31, fucking move back in with your folks if they'll have you and start in their garage. That way your overhead is nothing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the space is available, but you have to suck up like on an emotional level, like, is it considered failure if I move into my folks' place after
It is not.
been there.
It's not.
Right.
I mean, it depends on your circumstance,
Right.
but like, if
But you
were-
have to be willing to field people's like weird looks when you say, "Oh yeah, I live with my folks," and people are like, "Well, are you taking care of them?" And they're like, "No, they're kind of taking care of me while I'm trying to start my business."
No, anytime I hear about somebody doing that, I have like complete respect
Yeah.
for them. I knew somebody who just moved to New York, and they're like, I'm gonna live with my parents on their farm property and start a new life and new job. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we did it. We
Yeah.
just did it at a point where it was less socially weird to live with your folks still. And then yeah, so I mean that would be one way to start.
Hmm.
If you want to just go hard and can make yourself useful to your folks while you're living there, just to make it up to them, then do it.
Yeah. And then the other scenario I was thinking of was like, if you have any sort of like workspace, like an extra room or like a garage space
Yeah.
or like a shared workspace, you can slowly build up the equipment and practice and
Yeah.
build up your skills. But it's slower. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to be aware of that.
Right. And there's no failing if you're trying to do something more interesting with your life, even if it doesn't work out.
The success is you learning what you didn't like
Yes.
and learning what you could possibly do next time.
I think just learning something, period, is not
Yeah.
a waste of your time. It's a good if you think about your life as like you're spending it. If I were to spend a day, I'd rather learn how to do something or make something than do something or make something for someone else.
Yeah.
Or do something or make something that's less tangible. Like we make things that people can hold in their hands.
Yeah.
And we're not making like spreadsheets.
Or NFTs.
Right. Or cold calling people to try and sell something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're making, but even if you're making digital art, you're putting something out there that's a thing that people can derive something out of. You know?
There were a few times where when you told to me, it was like, listen, if this business doesn't work out, you have not failed.
Right.
And it's hard for me to like parse that in my head,
Right.
because to me, it's like, if this business doesn't work out, in my mind, I'm like, I absolutely failed. But you were like, think about the past 10 years that you've contributed to like everything you've made, all the joy you've brought to people who bought the stuff and really like using that thing.
Right. And not just that, was it a waste of time? Would you take it all back?
No.
Was it a waste of that amount of life that you put into it? Right? Like the people you met, the experiences you had, like that's the meat and potatoes of life. Like everything comes to an end. Say we go forever, like we still have to retire. We're gonna get old. Like,
I'm never retiring.
right.
I'm working.
You're gonna die in the shop, God damn it. But even then it'll end.
It'll
it's
end.
over.
Yeah.
So if it ends now, or if it ends when you're 60, like it still would have been a good use of life.
I agree. I mean, to this point, it's been a good 10 years.
Perfect. Yeah, it'd be hard to be better.
Yeah.
And I think, like I was going to say, people are so obsessed with progress. It has to go somewhere. It has to be something. I can't be comfortable until it reaches a certain level,
Yeah.
right? And that's no way to live. You're never happy. You're never comfortable. You're never satisfied because the goal keeps stretching
Yeah.
away from you, and you're grasping for something desperately that will never happen. And any level of success that you reach,
You just want the next
exactly
rung
and,
up.
and the pleasure of that success only lasts as long as your self-esteem can hold on to it. Because then you worry about, oh, well, if I slow down now, then I'll become irrelevant. And yada, yada, yada. The machine starts up. You're still not comfortable. You're still not enjoying your day to day. And there's a lot to enjoy here, even if you're not progressing,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, sometimes I think of the like bad days where I'm like, I really don't feel the gumption to do the thing, but then
Right.
I have to like kind of reorganize my brain a bit. I'm like, I get to have a fun drive to work. I get to spend my day in my shop dicking around with cool shit.
yeah,
And then I go home, have some dinner, enjoy my evening, and then
right.
do it again.
And I find that the lack of gumption is not because of the work, right? I don't have gumption loss from sanding that. I lose physical energy, but if something stops me from sanding that, it has nothing to do with sanding that. It has way more to do with other stresses in life.
Yeah.
For you, stresses in business. Like the business stress is stopping you from working on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or zapping you of the energy that's required to work on that. You know what I mean? The work itself is not the enemy. It's all the emotional baggage that we throw on top of everything we do in life.
That's true.
The work is very rarely the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the like emotional baggage or stress or anxiety we have with us that stops us from doing the thing that we want to do.
And how do you get past that? Or do you? Like, it doesn't go away, right?
I think a big part of it is, I mean, a good practical way to kind of to short circuit that a little bit is to like work for 20 minutes. Like just say, hey, I'm going to hit it for 20 minutes. And more often than not, I feel like you get locked in and then everything becomes easier. And the work kind of helps you calm down the fire of, you know, self-doubt and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to focus on how stressed you are when you're like focusing on how to do a thing or...
Yeah, I agree. Usually if I like just get in, do something like easy, not easy, but like where I don't have to think about it as
Yeah.
much, it gets me in the mode to do more.
Right.
Like if I just get in and grind something, I'm good for the day.
Yeah. And then on a more existential level, I'm not very good at it, but it does help sometimes to just basically forgive yourself for being stressed out.
Yeah.
And by that I mean like a big part of being stressed is worrying about how stressed you are. And if you can, or not even stressed, but depressed or whatever, you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be this or I shouldn't be that, and my life is good, and X, Y, and Z, and that's just another layer of emotional distress on top of the emotional distress, on top of the physical activity that you're trying to complete.
Yeah.
And the enemy is not necessarily that second layer or that first layer of stress. It's the second layer where you're beating yourself up about not being good enough and not being able to calm down.
Yeah. Like once you get in that cycle, it's tough.
Well, and just like you just said, like the job's hard, right?
Yep.
And it's allowed to be hard. And you're allowed to be anxious about how hard it is. And once you accept that and allow yourself that, it doesn't stay very hard. It becomes more manageable.
I don't know what I'm doing with this handle.
Uh-oh. And another thing that might help too is just like really trying to enjoy the actual act of doing the thing. It's like I was saying earlier about like let the work be rejuvenating and not depleting. And I think a big part of that is like kind of falling in love with the act, the you know how like people like exercising. Once they exercise enough, it becomes pleasurable, even though it hurts. And it's like if you felt like you did exercising without exercising, you'd think you were dying. You know what I mean? Like you'd feel like you're having a heart attack or something, right?
Yeah.
So you take all that pain and put it in a different context, and it suddenly becomes alarming. So the tactile nature of it, the like physicality of it, like my forearms are burning right now because I've been sanding this thing for 3 days. You can learn to love that part, and once you learn to love that part, it will start being restorative rather than a drain on your at least in my experience. Like being sore after a day of work is way better than being stressed.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And when you're physically tired, it's really hard to be mentally tired. At least for me.
Well, I'm trying to think about that. So far, in most cases, I agree with you. I can't think of a scenario where it's the opposite.
Like, imagine a day where you hand sanded that. No. You ground that handle, hand sanded it, and then went to go work out. If you got home, you'd be like, "Gah, I just want to like play Beam or whatever and relax."
Yeah.
And I guarantee you will not be as wound up about whatever, business stress you're holding on to.
I would say yes to an extent. Like it helps, but I don't think it will get all of it.
No, and I'm not suggesting it'll like cure you. Nothing will cure you of your emotional states. It'll just take the edge off enough to where things become more manageable.
Yeah.
Which is all you need.
Yeah.
Like pushing away negative emotions and negative experiences is just as taxing as experiencing them, if not more.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know, am I getting too esoteric?
I don't know. I'm just standing over here wondering what to do with the shapes on this thing. I'm gonna take a break. I think we covered a good bit.
Yeah, I think we're good. I can cut all my babbling out at the end.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's good enough. I gotta make a phone call, so.
Okay. I think we're gonna try to do more talks about whatever topics that we have. I think that'd be kind of fun, and if they're useful for you guys, we'll do more. If you have any topic that you're curious about, then definitely let us know, because I think this is fun. Like both of us sanding, working on stuff, and then hashing through something that like I like to think about and write about. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and it's hopefully it's good for people just to kind of at least take our temperature on like what's going on and how we navigate just on any level, like all of this.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys get a kick out of it.
Hopefully